Today's video is brought to you by seedsnow.com.
Welcome back to The Lead. I'm Jake Tapper. Also leading nationally, food for thought. 2 million people in more than 50 countries marched over the weekend in protest against a company called Monsanto. Now, you may not know exactly what Monsanto is, but you probably eat what they produce every day. Monsanto is a giant $58 billion multinational corporation with field offices in 60 countries. It was founded more than 100 years ago and may have been previously best known for being one of the producers of the chemicals contributing to Agent Orange, which was used by the Pentagon to defoliate dense forests in Vietnam and is believed to have caused disastrous health effects on those who came in contact with it. Now Monsanto not only produces pesticides designed to deliver a death blow to living things, pests, it also produces seeds designed to resist those lethal chemicals. And now that company is under fire for these seeds, which have been genetically modified, and for their legislative muscle. In the past few days, Monsanto and biotech firms have defeated efforts to allow labeling for genetically modified products and to strip away special protections for that industry. And over the weekend, millions marched against Monsanto.
You are what you eat. But what are you eating? Are you a transgenic organism? Since 1967, Americans have benefited from the fact that they have generally known what is in the food they enjoy every day. When America ceased to be a predominantly agrarian and rural society, one that grew and raised its own food locally, it became dependent as time passed on convenience stores, supermarkets, restaurants, and a massive commercial supply chain, replete not with chefs or farmers, but biological engineers.
Supermarket, symbol of the high standard of living in this country today. These products come from farms and ranches despite distance and season. They are the result of a miraculous agriculture. Tremendous advances on the farm and in the marketing system have created this miracle. The miracle whereby American agriculture has advanced more in the space of a single lifetime than world agriculture had in more than 7,000 years.
The Fair Packaging and Labeling Act, FPLA, signed into law by President Lyndon Johnson, provided a level of transparency and peace of mind to Americans who were now removed from producing their own sustenance. Since the late 1980s, that peace of mind has been called into question, and the idea that the quality of the American food supply is anything but clear has reached a crescendo, exemplified in this past weekend's worldwide march against Monsanto. It astonishingly spanned 436 cities, 52 countries, and involved an estimated 2 million people. Rather than abject anger and unfocused demands akin to the Arab Spring or Occupy Wall Street, the target was clear, the message concise. Although in LA, it looked as though many simply changed signs since Zuccotti Park. Some looked as though they didn't change at all.
Monsanto's evil. They suck. There shouldn't even be an issue. Get Monsanto out of our food. They're f***ups. They made Agent Orange.
GMO kills and makes everybody sick completely. So it's not good for you. It's made in a laboratory. It's been altered. It's not from the earth natural. It's not from God. So it's scary. Anybody to say that GMO is good, they're getting profited or some type of kickback or something to hide the real truth.
So the nonprofits and the health, like the science organizations from all over the world,
What about it?
If they come out and say that GM foods are safe?
They're absolutely wrong. I'm a licensed practitioner, so I will bypass all that, put my name on the line for it, that it's all a lie and deceit. Once again, it's for profit.
All I do is educate people morning, noon, and night in my little tiny raw food restaurant on 9th and Main with the yoga studio underground.
Have you ever had corn that just grew out of the ground 10 minutes after it snapped off the stalk from a real seed? It's better than sex. Real corn, that is. Real corn is better than sex.
The over-century-old corporation Monsanto, and many others not limited to Dow AgroSciences, Syngenta, DuPont, Bayer Crop Science, BASF, are fundamentally altering the international food supply, and citizens of the world evidently want to know to what extent, and force companies to stand by their product by proudly labeling genetically modified organisms. Opponents ironically claim labeling would represent an unnatural competitive advantage for those who don't use GM products, and rather than merely inform consumers, they argue that legally mandating such a label can only serve to mislead and falsely alarm consumers. While there are many things that affect the quality of our food, GMOs are unsurprisingly still not well known. They are produced by a relatively young set of genetic engineering techniques referred to as recombinant DNA technology, pioneered by Herbert Boyer, a founder of the famous biotech firm Genentech. The technologies infuse genetic material from plants, animals, bacteria, and even viruses to create transgenic organisms, which are designed to fulfill a variety of functions. In 1978, Genentech artificially produced insulin, the hormone used to regulate safe blood sugar levels, using a particular strain of E. coli. The applications seemed infinite and the need obvious, but another branch of genetic modification also emerged under the guidance of advanced genetic sciences and the Monsanto company. This branch, however, has had very little to do with the treatment of disease, quite the contrary. The 112-year-old Monsanto's first product was the artificial sweetener, saccharin, sold to the Coca-Cola Company. The agribusiness has since offered the world a bountiful melange of dubious goodies. Since the early 1940s, the men and women of Monsanto, among other things, have helped develop the nuclear weapon, given us the infamous pesticide DDT, developed Agent Orange, or Roundup's big brother for use in the Vietnam War, recombinant bovine growth hormone, or RBST, to grow our cattle, and ultimately led their scientists in 1982 to create the world's first genetically modified plant cell. Nothing less than an infamous history, to be sure. So it's not a surprise people are skeptical about their relatively recent foray into our food supply. GMO has since permeated our food supply, either directly through staple products like soy, wheat, tomatoes, potatoes, and even now, salmon, which, contrary to initial belief, has been reported to be able to interbreed with wild fish and spawn generations of hybrids. Indirectly, GMO corn and its derivative, high-fructose corn syrup, is used in virtually every sweetened item on store shelves. Want to avoid GMO foods? How would you know?
Now, most of the time, I bet you don't even think about what you're eating. That's not good. Your body is like a fine-tuned machine. The food you eat is the fuel that keeps you running. But how do you know the nutritional value in that cup of yogurt or that bowl of cereal? Look on the label. Hey, I'm Gia, and I'm here to talk about the Nutrition Facts label. If you want to stay healthy and energetic, then reading and understanding food labels can help you make food choices that give you more energy and help you feel your best. And we can all use a little more brain power. Don't say it. Don't even think it. There are 3 things you need to know about the Nutrition Facts label. Just 3. Calories, serving size, and percent daily value. Got it?
Hence the push for labeling. However, the Food and Drug Administration has yet mandated the provision of information necessary in order to make such informed decisions about our diet. The American Association for the Advancement of Science, AAAS, attempting to quell fears over transgenic species, claims new GM crops, quote, in order to receive regulatory approval in the United States, each new GM crop must be subjected to rigorous analysis and testing, and should any new proteins be added, quote, they must be shown to be neither toxic nor allergenic, and only labeled if the absence of the information provided poses a special health or environmental risk. This might seem odd because it's doubtful the omission of carbohydrates, for instance, would pose such risk, yet they are mandated to be labeled. While the industry, the FDA, and the AAAS says the cost would be exorbitant and unfair, the health non-benefits of McDonald's calorie-rich and nutrition-poor meals are posted right at the counter, yet that hasn't deterred the billions served. So why doesn't the FDA throw us a bone? Well, from Presidents Bill Clinton to Barack Obama and across party lines, the FDA, like many of the alphabet soup agencies designed to regulate, are co-opted and infused with experts plucked from the industries these agencies were designed to hold accountable. Washington is often called incestuous, but revolving relationships like these raise an eyebrow, and it's because of these relationships that it's no wonder why people love to hate Monsanto. While the industry and many well-meaning libertarians are pointing to growing pro-GMO consensus among scientists, there are some glaring issues. The AAAS notes in their board of directors statements on the labeling of GMOs that the European Union, quote, invested more than 300 million euros in research on the biosafety of GMOs, and the main conclusion to be drawn from the efforts of more than 130 research projects covering a period of more than 25 years of research and involving more than 500 independent research groups is that biotechnology, and in particular GMOs, are not per se more risky than conventional plant breeding technologies. The AAAS goes on to claim that, contrary to claims of freakish tumor-laden animals sensationalized by the media, quote, none have stood up to rigorous scientific scrutiny, and that, quote, GM foods and their non-GM counterparts are nutritionally equivalent. 20 years ago, the government said the same thing. Former Vice President Dan Quayle's Regulatory Relief Initiative, part of a laudable and broader effort to get the government out of the way of economic growth, also exposed Americans to this then unknown world of genetic manipulation. Quayle's FDA policy, created by former Monsanto lawyer and Vice President of Monsanto Public Policy Michael Taylor, was predicated on the idea that genetic engineering was the same as traditional plant breeding, splicing, cross-pollination, etc., and therefore required no new regulations. Barack Obama appointed this man to Deputy Commissioner of Foods and Veterinary Medicine. Obama also appointed Roger Beachy, former Monsanto researcher, as the USDA's top scientist to head the Center for Food and Agriculture, and he also appointed Islam Siddiqui, a former Monsanto lobbyist, as U.S. Agricultural Trade Representative. In the last 30 years since the first modified plant cell, there has been 15 to 20 years of widespread consumption of GMOs. Concern has only risen recently because of the expansion of the internet and independent but underfunded studies conducted mostly abroad, which are only outweighed by a few factors: the lack of true long-term multi-generational studies, GMO industry-financed counter-studies, a university system reluctant to slight their corporate sponsors, and the aforementioned cherry-picked bureaucrats. Stratagem, harkening back to those intellectual pursuits funded by Big Tobacco and recently parodied in the movie Thank You for Smoking. In fact, the AAAS statement on GMO cites a 2011 Oregon State review of GMO literature from around the world. Only 5 studies considered, quote, long-term or, quote, multi-generational were conducted for 2 or more years, and the longest, a study by the Italian Ministry of Health, tested sheep and covered 4 years, the amount of time it takes to finish high school or college. Usually most animals, quote, to assess the potential health benefits of GM-based food or feed, were given only 33% GM animal feed. but after 3 generations of sheep, quote, changes were detected in cell nuclei of liver and the pancreas. The ministry's scientists concluded that although there were small effects, in general, GM corn is substantially equivalent to conventional corn, but more metabolic research is needed in gastrointestinal organs and the immune response mechanisms. Clearly, the small effects raised an eyebrow in Rome. Additionally, even the shorter studies, while scientists repeated the mantra and even go as far as the Italians in saying GMO crops are substantially equivalent to their counterparts, their conclusions reflected that GM products do influence the liver and pancreas, organs responsible for detoxification, protein synthesis, and metabolism. Over the short term, we have seen Mr. Quayle and Mark Taylor have been right to claim that GMOs are nutritionally equivalent to natural food, but are they healthfully equivalent? Other studies have shown GMO to be connected with mental illness, gastrointestinal problems and obesity, infertility, birth defects, autoimmune diseases, food allergies, cancer, poisoning of water, and ravaging the environment in general. Herbicides are one thing, but designing a consumable organism, each with its own little pesticide factory within, for mankind to eat, prima facie sounds like bad news bears, yet testing and proffering results are handled on a volunteer basis, not mandated according to the FDA's regulations. Should it be found to even put a hole in your stomach and made illegal subsequently, the Monsanto Protection Act snuck in as a rider in recent legislation, and in a grand twist of irony protects the rights of farmers, those in contract to grow GMO products, to contact the Secretary of Agriculture for a waiver and circumvent court judgments or bans. It has taken an army of independent scientists, lawyers, investigative journalists, and bloggers to expose what was almost as obvious with the tobacco industry. But in the end, letters to your representative and merely voting the bums out doesn't alter the underlying inertia of agribusiness in today's economy. Their size and clout has a positive relationship with our abdication of control over producing what we put in our bodies. But thanks to the diligent efforts of activists and concerned citizens, we have the ability to negotiate this minefield of genetic oddities, a non-GMO shopping guide, for instance. With tools like these, we can vote with our dollars and promote healthy alternatives to our genetically subsidized food supply. The obvious tactic to rout these near-omnipotent corporations like Monsanto is to do it yourself, join a co-op or CSA, and reconnect with what has been part of human culture since time immemorial, growing our own food. You don't have to be outside the city to make it happen either. Just see urban farming. And if you live in extreme temperatures, greenhouses or technology like Vermisoc grows food outdoors even in 115-degree temperature during the summer with food waste called worm wine. Think about it. Many countries around the world have outright banned GMO products, particularly in Europe, and are being dragged through the World Trade Courts because of it. Internet money bombs in California last September raised an astonishing $2 billion from small donors, but California's GMO labeling initiative, after enjoying approval ratings as high as 67% just weeks before the election, were ultimately defeated come November. Literally days before the election, top GMO peddling producers banded together and saturated the mainstream media against Proposition 30, which mandated all California food outside of restaurants be labeled for GMO. The industry's argument? Once again, new labels would cost too much. The industry actually might be right. Considering how ubiquitous GMOs are and how nearly every headline brand includes some form of GMO, labels might give the impression that all food ultimately comes from just one place, a laboratory, rather than a farm. Imagine the stocks that day. Ultimately, the responsibility doesn't squarely rest on Monsanto, but our aggregate choices. Knowledge, after all, is power. But as we all know, so is food. Therefore, if you buy organic and local, or grow your own, yours grows too. If you enjoy this content, please share it with everyone and everywhere. Find the source material and more videos like these at AMTV Media and greenwavewithane.com. Both are part of the AMTV network. Like us at Greenwave TV on Facebook, and follow us on Twitter at AMTV News and Greenwave, again, with an E. Thank you for watching.